profits, in the Schumpeterian sense, is what happens when you're actually investing, innovating, all these entrepreneurship opportunities that I'm sure you're engaging in. But when we don't know the difference, it might be that we also introduce, for example, tax incentives, which sound good, but we don't measure, are they just increasing profits, or are those profits also getting reinvested into the system and creating what in economics we call additionality, making things happen that otherwise would not have happened. When the financial sector is just moving money around and making a lot of money from financial intermediation and charging fees, and there's little evidence that that money goes into the real economy, is that rents or is that profits? And it's not about finance bad or good. How do we actually shape finance to be actually investing those funds into the economy and actually helping to transform the economy instead of themselves being part of the problem? And that's what I wrote about in the book, Value of Everything. And so what would it look like to actually transform these 17 goals that everyone, including the Dominican Republic, has signed up to, but bring them to the ground and with a local context, not in a city, in a region, in a country, actually debating what the goals are. I spoke yesterday to the mayor here in Santo Domingo. There you are, Bella. I'm even, look, first of all, I have so much stuff. Okay, Carolina gave me this. The president gave me the earrings. You guys gave me the net. So anyone else, I am available. I got this from the Minister of Traditional Communities in Brazil. I'm just traveling around, piling it on. If anyone has a bracelet, I still could. Anyway, so we spoke yesterday about water management, waste management. But that's also intersectoral, right? How do you manage waste in terms of not only how we, treat, for example, water treatment plants and waste treatment plants, but even what becomes waste in the first place. Coming back to, please, no plastic bottles. We have way too many plastic bottles, even when we have good waste management systems. We should stop producing that plastic in the first place. So anyway, how do we transform these societal goals and treat them as seriously as we did the moonshot? Because I don't believe people when they say there's no money. Of course, a small country like the Dominican Republic has less money than a big country like China. But if we waste even the money we have, like the 30% of government budgets which buy stuff, we are part of the problem. And if we also don't have what Ricardo talked about, which is regional integration, then of course during COVID, you can't have one country doing the purchasing of the vaccine. We need advanced purchase agreements, as a regional bloc, hopefully, which again, we did with COVID in some countries, but then forgot this issue of also solidarity and increasing our supply chains along the way. So what is a mission? In the moon landing, if they just stopped at the space race, beat the Russians, Sputnik, nothing would have happened. They transformed the challenge, which is the equivalent of an SDG, the space race, into a concrete mission which you can actually answer, yes or no, did you achieve it? And all the teenagers who say, blah, 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 you guys are just bullshitting. They're right, because we don't even transform the challenges into missions and moonshots that can be answered, did you achieve it or not? We keep it vague, so no one really knows, and it's easy for the political slogans, no? How do we then transform the mission into something that is not captured by one sector? Climate change is not just about energy. It's about waste management. It's about transport. It's about clothing, right? There's almost nothing that shouldn't be touched. The digital and AI economy, of course it's essential for climate change-related targets, where the cost of not doing it will cost you much, much more to pick up the mess later. So an intersectoral mission matters, not only because most problems require many different sectors in the business community, but also beware, if a mission is just for one sector, that sector will capture government and you will have corruption, right? We can talk about corruption when it's theatrical, like in Italy we're have famous, we did everything before. We had Mussolini before Hitler. We had Trump. No, we don't have Trump. We had Berlusconi before Trump. We had Mani Pulite before Lava Jatos, whatever they call it in Brazil. But this corruption that many people complain against here in Italy, in Africa, it's a result of laziness. If you're going to the moon and back, believe me, you will want to work with the best. And you will have to think about it in this more war room kind of way, all of government together trying to figure things out, like in COVID, where you had the Department of Health, Department of Education, Department of Finance, right, because of the money given to the companies. Even the military was involved. So having an intersectoral approach and then using every single instrument, public loans, subsidies, guarantees, tax incentives, procurement, to crowd in from the private sector, bottom up, top down, everything gets boring, bottom up experimentation towards mission accomplished. So I had the honor to work with the European Union on this because I had been thinking about it. I convinced them. Now there's a missions instrument in the Commission as part of the Horizon program. It's about 30 billion euros. It's called missions funding. But the problem is they didn't put it at the center of government. I said it has to go to the cabinet office. Instead, it's in a cute little place called DG Innovation. So it's part of the innovation budget, which is nice because innovation is what I'm talking about. But I'm talking about bringing missions to the center of a city, to the center of a region, to the center of a national government, and making sure that how the different departments and the different sectors work together is truly ambitious. This was an example. This is actually now one of the European missions, a plastic-free ocean, which you guys are in the middle of an ocean, and you will want that ocean to be very clean. But as you see, it requires lots of different sectors. I worked in the UK to transform the industrial strategy away from just being sectoral. They were obsessing about automotive, aerospace, creative sector, finance, life sciences. I said, no, focus on the challenges. And together we thought about sustainable mobility and the fact that then the mission under sustainable mobility became a congestion-free, sustainable, and accessible mobility system meant that some of those bottom-up projects had to be around disabilities. Because if it's going to be accessible, you'll need to invest and innovate in an entrepreneurial way in the private sector to make sure everyone, even those who are disabled, can use, for example, a public transport system. So fueling that bottom-up innovation for mission accomplished, this was in a report I wrote recently for CEPAL. And again, thinking of 100 carbon-neutral cities in Latin America, what it means for different sectors, and again, different examples, including carbon-neutral agriculture, sustainable energy matrix, clean urban and rural electric mobility. For me, this was just to show what I meant by missions, so we don't confuse a challenge, which is very broad, with a mission. We don't confuse the mission with the sectors, right? This is not just about recycling, just about energy, and not confusing projects, right, with the mission, because otherwise we just fund all these cute little things, but we don't have that portfolio approach, and you don't get the sum being bigger than the parts.
Asiento allí.